Hi. So I run a business called Resonance. It's a social finance intermediary. We work with social enterprises of all different shapes and sizes, from very, very early stage, just started entrepreneurs, through to £80 million charities, all trying to raise risk capital. And we work in real estate, in community share issues, and in the angel space. There's two questions here. One is, what do social enterprises need to do to get access to finance? And there are a few sort of key things that we might well unpick if they don't come up from the floor. But also then there's the wider question of what the sector needs infrastructure-wise. So hopefully both those things will come out in this course of the conversation.
Thank you. And now Danyal Sattar.
Yeah, thanks, Rod. I mean, clearly I've been preparing for this session for 46 years because my parents spelt my name a little bit different so that you could tell the two of us apart. So a bit of forward planning always helps. I'm Danyal Sattar. I'm the finance fund manager at Esmee Fairbairn Foundation. This is where we took a 20 million piece of our endowment and put it aside to invest in charities, social enterprises, intermediaries, developing the market, and all the other words we like to use in our sector. I used to work for Charity Bank before it became a bank, and then briefly while it was a bank, because I thought it would be good to learn from the old boys how to do banking the way they did it. Before that, for a network of social banks based in Brussels, I also helped set up a loan fund for inner city Birmingham, and was there in the very early days of New Economics Foundation back in 1990.
Great. So, again, a reminder, in previous feedback forums, you said you wanted more time to speak out from the floor, so this is your chance. And just to be clear, the audience has not been seated, so we have not planted questions in the audience. So I thought that with a sector like this, that would be shocking. So the floor is open. It's not Q&A, although Daniel and Daniel will jump in whenever they find appropriate. What do you think the banking sector needs to do for you, mainstream banks? Nobody has anything to say. We all moan about the banks day in, day out, and none of you have anything you want to say about what the banks can do for you from the standpoint of credit or access to credit or, there you go. Giles, introduce yourself to the few who don't know you.
I'm Giles Chitty. I've been in the independent financial advisory world for about 30 years. Started the first ethical financial institution in Britain, I claim, in 1983. So I've been looking at these issues for a long time. I'm trying to think how to be as brief as possible, Rod. What I like about my bank, which is the Co-op Bank, which I didn't like at first because it was such a hassle transferring to it, is that there is a fantastic database software equipment that tells me, as I'm getting old and forgetful, I just go online and I can get an exact up-to-date view of exactly what I've spent, what's gone out. You know, it's a big piece of software there that I can use. I don't value them for anything else, actually, apart from their ethics, which is, you know, good but not as exciting as a social enterprise, basically.
That was pretty brief. So Giles likes the online banking facility that banks offer. Other people have any views on? Yep, Paul.
Hi, Paul Harrod. We heard the inspiring example of the LA Fitness founder who remortgaged his own house to start his business. But I guess for most social enterprises, it's probably not necessarily appropriate or indeed possible to put personal assets on the line. And if the project itself doesn't have assets, I wondered if the two Daniels could comment whether that would largely rule out debt financing, at least in the early stages.
Do you guys want to take that on? So just so everybody, I mean, anybody who's not from the UK, anytime you want to do anything in the UK, a bank says, yeah, but we'll have a piece of your house. And if you don't have a house with a piece of equity free, you're stuck.
Well, what we did in our finance fund is we took a trick out of our Ian Cheshire's book, Kingfisher. So we merely stole the ideas of Venturesome, who we worked with. I have to say, as a collaborator in the way that they invested. They came up with this idea of, they didn't come up with the idea, but they utilized the idea of quasi-equity. So it's a way of making a loan that's based on performance in a social enterprise or charity where you can't actually take an equity stake, because that would be the thing that would give you a security. So we made a couple of investments using that in Global Action Plan, a charity that provides energy advice services that enable them to build their team of staff, selling those services and developing new services and growing their unrestricted income stream. So we don't get security as such, but we get a piece of their turnover. So we get a small percentage of turnover on the 4 or 5 products that we've invested in this range. So that was our attempt to be almost to be a risk sharer. Because I guess what I learned from my banking hat is that, of course, bankers don't take risks. The entrepreneur takes the risk, and you do everything possible to reduce your risk, and then you might be left with a tiny, tiny little bit of risk, which is your risk. And the reason why you do that is you've got depositors, and depositors, like Giles, don't want banks to go and lose all their deposit money on dodgy loans. Yet that doesn't really share the risk. So this quasi-equity way of sharing risk was a crack at it. The downside, so you might think, great, unsecured lending, all based on turnover. If the turnover isn't there, the facility isn't repaid, it eventually expires. What's the possible downsides of social enterprise? Well, the downside is if you do well, so do we. So you have to pay us more money under that quasi-equity deal. We cap it at 20% per annum, just because we thought that looked reasonable. The 20% return, yeah. And the forecast kind of bore that out. We didn't think there was a super return lurking away in there. But maybe if there had been a super return lurking away in there, we wouldn't have capped it. So that was our attempt to do it. No security, well, give us the upside of a higher return.
I mean, I think there's a slight difference between remortgaging a house to put money into your business and to go with your business to the bank to get a bank loan secured against your property. I know it is a fine line, but there is a slight difference. But on the other hand, I think if you don't have any capital to put in, then a lot of particularly the angels that we work with, who are much more comfortable with risk than lending savers' monies from a banking perspective. They want to see not just sweat equity, which they value at nearly nothing. They want to see either real cash or they want to see alchemy. They want to see what you've done with nothing, because that's part of a test of being an entrepreneur. So if you can achieve something, you can achieve some sale, you can, I use the metaphor, you can build the plane. Don't just draw the plane, build the plane, get it on the runway, and then you need to fill it up with fuel. That's when investors will come alongside. It's incredibly difficult to get seed funding from a bank unless you've had a relationship with them for a decade or more. I'm not really sure that even counts anymore, but it's hard. But to be honest, if you haven't got it and you need a little bit, then go out and get a job for a bit and earn some money and save up and then start your business. Don't always expect somebody else with capital to take the risk that you can't take yourself.
Let's probe this a little bit more. Suzanne, I'll come to you in a second, but just so if Mike can get over there, just probe this a little bit longer. So Danyal Sattar, you talked about kind of quasi-equity, which deals with the way that you can get equity-like returns for equity-like risk, but it doesn't deal with the thrust of Paul's question, which is really about what does a bank have to back the loan? And banks, if they sit there and say, well, we need the downside protection, and you don't have it, you don't have it. Now, I wish Marco Morganti was still here, because as much as I could make out of their website, they have a product called Subito 5 Meal or something like that. If anybody can quickly check through an iPad and maybe correct me on what it is. But apparently, they kind of look at if you're a charity, they look at your last year's income and they assume that you're going to get a certain percentage of it, and then they loan with that as security. So there's no real security, apart from the fact that you're probably not going to go from a charity that raises 2 million euros to a charity that raises 0. That's unlikely. So they give you, they imagine that you're going to, I mean, what about products like that? Do we see those in the UK? Should we see those in the UK? Should Barclays offer them, or any bank?
I think there's loads of products that could be developed. I mean, mortgages, personal mortgages are offered on a kind of hope that we're all going to stay in the same job or roughly similar or better for 25 years, but we're probably on a 3-month notice or 6-month notice at best. So it's a real bet on an individual, really. So, but that system sort of works because it's proven that it can follow through. I mean, I think there are CDFIs out there that do this early stage lending, but they also don't necessarily do it at mortgage rates. I think that's the other thing. So I liked one of London Rebuilding Society's early products. I don't know if you still have this, Naomi, but where the members could save. It's basically a credit union for social enterprises. So actually build a relationship and capitalise the lender, and actually then you get the ability to draw out a proportion of, or a multiple of what you've saved. I thought that's sort of quite enlightened self-interest. But I think there's a lot of room for looking at what the real risk is rather than what the unknowns are. I think this guy from River Simple challenged me earlier saying, well, what's the difference between, there is a difference between risk and uncertainty. And I think if we're going to be clever about financial instruments, it's trying to understand some of those things and create products that work on that. So,
Naomi, do you still offer that product? They do. That's Naomi Kingsley from London Rebuilding Society. Suzanne Beagle, you had a question right there. There's a mic right behind you.
Hi. There's a financial institution in the States called RSF Social Finance, and one of their products is if you're a social enterprise and you're looking to raise capital, loan capital, you can go to your customers. Your customers can put money in RSF as loan guarantees. RSF lends money, and then if you don't pay it back, your customers are essentially committing that they will sacrifice that, but they're not, and that's the scheme. And so I'm curious as to whether that's a conversation that's happening here in the UK, whether you think that's a thing that banks could be doing, where it's up to the entrepreneur to make sure they have a solid enough community, customer base to be able to make that happen, and that community can, in fact, put money in as a guarantee, but they wind up with an incentive to continue supporting that enterprise because, of course, they're the ones who've backed the enterprise in the first place.
So, Daniel, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, and it sounds like a fantastic idea. If I can talk about one of our biggest failures, which was a mild success in the end, we put up £1.39 million to Street UK to set up a grey market microfinance institution here in the UK. The fantastic Rosalind Kopsaro, who now heads up Oiko Credit, came over from Poland to give that a go. And the one element of it that just didn't work was the group lending side. So whether or not it was that the entrepreneurs in this particular market segment it was targeting just lacked that social capital and that connectivity and a customer base prepared to do that, I don't know. They found the market was there, but it was too thin and geographically spread market for any one loan officer to economically support. Why it was a very mild success is that they ended up being the back office for about 30 to 35 CDFIs. So inadvertently, we've created a network of microfinance providers, just not £1.39 million worth of investment worth, I suspect. So it's a fantastic idea. I guess the test over here, the test is always, does it translate from its cultural context to here? And that would be fascinating to find out.
I don't think there is anything like that. I think it sounds fantastic, because I think one of the big issues for banks is trying to understand whether entrepreneurs actually do have the connection with their customers and the route to market and all of this. But if you can do that kind of thing, then that's phenomenally bankable, it would seem. I think the thing that we do have in the UK, which is used by people like the Phone Co-op quite well, is the ability to raise equity through community share issues and others from their customer base. It works very well for local organisations as well, where effectively you're creating a customer base, or you're incentivising your customer base to remain more connected. So, but yeah, it sounds like we've got something to learn from that.
Now, is Teresa Burton in the audience from BuzzBank? So, Teresa, you and I were talking about it. I just think you have to come in on this. And then there was a gentleman in the back, so you'll be next.
Yeah, so exactly on that point, we feel that if an entrepreneur can raise an unsecured loan through their community, we're obviously a platform, so it's a little bit disintermediated from doing it through a fund. But if they can raise the loan directly from their crowd, we feel that shows their sort of entrepreneurial mettle to get out and connect to their community and convert their pitch into funds that they can use for seed capital. So we do enable them to be able to raise loans on BuzzBank through their community. But they have to do the work of getting out there and converting. Okay.
Now the hands are starting to pop up. So we've got 12 more minutes, and we're just going to go around the room. That gentleman, that woman, this gentleman, and pink tie, you've asked one. So we'll do that one, and then maybe we'll get to you. Go ahead.
Hi there. I'm Ben from Pants to Poverty, and we've been looking at different options at the moment that are currently available, different tools or products that are out there. And one that seems patently obvious, potentially to benefit social enterprise, is the Enterprise Finance Guarantee Scheme that's already out there for the government, has been around for a very long time, and ultimately means that the government will guarantee 75% of the loan that the bank offers. So should this not be a tool that banks should be looking to exploit more, and especially for social enterprise at the moment?
Okay. Who is the next person? I think it's that. Yeah, right?
Hello, just one simple question.
Could you introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah, sorry. William Lilly from the Accord Housing Group, Social Investment Manager. Just a quick question. What's your views on, I suppose, in terms of what investors can do? There's a lot of emphasis on what entrepreneurs have to do to access loan finance and social investment. What about investors getting involved in things like accelerator programs or these kind of Y incubator type models where investors get involved in the actual journey from idea to from conceptualization to actual reality?
Thank you. There was one down here. I think it was a woman. Okay, maybe not. So it's, yep, you right there. And then this gentleman in the white shirt.
Annika Tavarin from Social Finance. I'd be interested in hearing how you would like your investee companies to report and measure the social impact that the investees are having.
Okay, so on reporting. You, sir, with the white shirt and the glasses?
Yeah, hello, that's Rupert from Personal Development Bureau. We've just completed on the first round of funding using crowdfunding, using equity-based crowdfunding. I'm obviously very interested to hear what the lady says from BuzzBank, because it's a slightly different model. I just wonder why it's not being talked a little bit more about today, because one of the things that we're really keen to do is to engage with our investors. We've got 68 investors who put in £25,000 and turn those into advocates, because those advocates are going to be the best people in terms of referring business to you and also helping us to achieve our social mission and purpose. So I just thought it might be just useful to feed back to the room, that was all. So,
thank you.
Cheers.
Do you want to take some of those in any particular order?
Yeah, okay.
Daniel, we'll start with you.
Enterprise guarantee, I think the bank should be doing it. I've yet to do one. Every bank that we speak to say, oh no, we don't want to do that, or we don't feel like it, or it's not quite right for us, or whatever. So I really don't know what the rationale behind it isn't, but I think that's a fair challenge. It seems to be a system that should work, so why doesn't it? Don't know. I think the idea, getting involved in the idea and the journey is extremely important. So I welcome all these incubator venture lab stuff. I think that's a great way for investors to get involved in deal flow and find out whether they really understand the motivations of the entrepreneur and the financial model. It's a much better way of testing it than doing some kind of Dragon's Den pitch. But it's quite difficult to get those systems to self-finance. So the investors really actually have to finance that incubation process as well, and few are as committed to funding that as perhaps I would like.
Danyal Sattar, do you want to take some of those?
Yeah, I think some of the CDFIs are using an enterprise guarantee scheme. I think there's a bit of a clash with CITRA, the Community Investment Tax Relief, so you can kind of do one or the other. So there's a bit of an issue there. I think, yeah, the Y Combinator, yeah, we've seen this little wave of incubators coming along. Psychic Studios, I think we put a bit of money in, the Westminster Hub, a Grey Ghost, Stephen Brockman, a range of people, Bethnal Green Ventures, of course. So, fine. I'm just, if I can just be mildly grumpy, because now that I'm thoroughly middle-aged, I'm too old to be an angry young man. So if I'm just mildly grumpy, it's not only that we have to see 2,500 to 3,000 applications, grant and loan, coming into us at Esmee Fairbairn Foundation, and wade through them and say, yeah, it would be great if you actually had some figures to go with the words. It would be great if you actually had a team rather than just you as an individual. Have you thought about your governance? Have you thought about your board? Now I've got to go down there and engage in the very development process and help them make up their businesses that turn into applications that come to us. So there is this mildly grumpy bit of me that just says, come on, I'm not wholly convinced. Equally, we all know this thing, investment readiness, if you want one of those words that nobody outside the sector really understands. Nobody's been able to crack investment readiness, and maybe this is a way of doing it. Maybe this is a way of giving it a go. What I'd really like to see is some research analysis on the effectiveness of incubator programs in producing businesses out of the other end, whether that's from the commercial world or the social side. So I'd like a little bit of evidence for me wouldn't go amiss on that.
Okay, Luca, and then Margaret, and then this gentleman.
Luca Bosata, clearly so, advisory board. Do you think that the regulators have a big part to play in making this work, that although well-meant regulations will suffocate any innovation, and especially getting these types of finances or investments to retail investors?
Okay, pass the mic there to Margaret. Please introduce yourself.
Do you want me to ask my question before they answer?
Yeah.
Margaret McGovern from Pinwimmick in Amsterdam. Put your money where your mouth is, community of investors. I just want to go back to what Daniel said. We have since May reviewed about 35 business plans from social enterprises and social investments. And I really urge the social enterprises to skill up on the business side of things, because what's happening that we see is that people who grew up in traditional business are migrating over to the social side, and they come with the language that actually mid-stage investors, so we don't really do early seed, that mid-stage investors want to hear. And they can just, they can talk that language. I just said to somebody that we're working with a great organization that's 10 years old in the social space, and they do fantastic work. They have a $2 million a year budget in grant that is going to get phased out over 3 years. And I had to explain to them what the difference was between equity and debt. And so, yeah, we're going to help them get ready for investment, but really you will do yourself a service. So that's my little soapbox right now.
Thank you. If you could pass it just to the gentleman behind you. And then we'll answer these questions and Annika's that we left over from last time.
Patrice Schneider from Media Development Loan Fund. I just wanted to input into the question of guarantee from a European perspective. 6 years ago, we raised 20 million Swiss francs from a private bank in Switzerland, if you can believe that, for social investment. The question of the guaranteed appeared, and where we got it was literally from the Development Agency of Switzerland, DEZA, the equivalent of DFID, who literally put a guarantee. It was revolutionary. 6 years later, all the money's been paid back. bank. So the guarantee didn't kick in. So we've renewed it. But the key message here, aside from chest banging exercise, is the fact that now Sweden is actually picking up on that. There's a full report on how the usage of taxpayers' money, which, by the way, is becoming a very sensitive issue for development aid, but also for social issues, is being used. So I don't know either of anything in the UK happening similarly, but there is some form of a European modest happening around the question of using guarantee from authorities.
Great. Thank you for that. I think Danyal Brewer is going to start with Annika's question on financial reporting, and then we'll pick up some of these that were asked.
Okay. I'm a fan of social impact reporting. I am also echo what Jonathan Jenkins said earlier this morning at breakfast, that basically I think it's going to take a decade for us to really have confidence in any kind of data that we generate. That doesn't mean we don't need to do it. We need to tell the story. But what we and I think this is valid for social investors as well as for banks and mainstream investors, is start measuring the things that are important to you. Work out what is it, what's your theory of change, what's the metric that actually matters to you. Don't just tell us how much carbon you've reduced or how many jobs, if actually what you care about is disabled children. And there's so much disconnect, and there's so much, oh, I can tell that story, so let's do it. So this is what we're doing with the Angel Co-Investment Fund, which we're running with Finance Southeast, is getting the social enterprises to articulate 2 or 3 key impact measures that they want to see that will be success for them. And then we want targets, we want measurements. They won't necessarily, and we think that's defense against mission drift as well as other things.
Great. And Daniel, do you want to take some of those newer questions?
Yeah. I mean, just flipping back to the crowdfunding one first. Great fans. We invest in BuzzBank. We invest in some other fundraising platforms. Very keen. The question that we're not sure about is the US experience different from the UK experience in that US private investors are far more used to managing their investments individually than in mutual funds or unit trusts in the way that we do over here. So is there a bit of a cultural difference that we then run into with crowdfunding platforms? Is our culture just slightly out? So I don't know. I'm enormously enthused by it because it's a great way of cracking this early stage funding. Just get out there and raise it from people who really do want to give you money. But there's a question there that I think we're all kind of exploring. The regulation stuff. We have always complied with the law, with the FSA, with the regulators, but I guess in this sector what we've also done is we've found our ways of complying. For example, at Aston Reinvestment Trust, we didn't take deposits from the general public. That's illegal. We're not a licensed deposit taker. But we raise money through Industrial and Provident Society shares, which is withdrawable share capital, which are an exempt form of deposits. So on the one hand, I think, let's keep being innovative and find smart ways around the regulators. On the other hand, I take Luke Fletcher's point at Bates Wells and Braithwaite that actually if you start doing kind of bigger stuff with more and more money, actually you do need to really make sure you're looking after people's money safely, and the regulators have a part to play in that. Although, given what's happened in 2008, I kind of wonder. What else have we got on here? Yeah, guarantees. I think guarantees are, we haven't really cracked guarantees. I think we made one guarantee out of our fund so far. It's a tremendously powerful instrument, all that leverage, and yet we just don't seem to manage to crack it. So there really is something there. We just haven't quite got to it.
I think that's all the time we have, so you eventually really opened up. I want to thank you all for your comments and questions. To me, there's 4 or 5 issues. One is, so a lot of terminology that we haven't executed really well. Incubation, mentoring, etc., still really haven't cracked it, and a call for more evidence. One is people should do their plans properly, so being social is no excuse for being sloppy or slapdash. This question about backstopping, guaranteeing, is it the agencies that can do it, CEDA, USAID, DFID, etc., or does it have to be a house? Or is there room for innovation like Morganti and his lot did down in Italy? clear need for standard measurement, or the measurement that is effective and inexpensive to do. And finally, I guess Daniel's call that we are innovative. I think being innovative is really essential. We in the UK have tremendously flexible laws, and they allow for quite a lot of innovation, and I think people in this audience are expert at deploying it. So, would you join me in thanking yourselves and Daniel for the presentation?